No worries. Good morning. Welcome to the February 20th, 2025 meeting of the Downtown Design Commission. My name is Justin Brandon. I'm chair of the commission. The agenda and documents are located at https://okc.primegov.com/public/portal. You would then select the Downtown Design Commission meeting and then click on an agenda item, and the relevant documents will come up below the item. Please see the agenda for additional information regarding meeting procedures and the review process. If you're parked in the Sheridan Walker parking garage north of John Rex Elementary or in the Arts District parking garage south of City Hall, staff can validate a parking validation ticket for you. Keith, will you please call roll?
Brandon.
Here.
Black. Here. Schmidt. Here. We have quorum.
Thank you. Item number 2, approval of minutes. Do I have any committee members who want to speak on that? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Item number 3, cases withdrawn. We have none. Item number 4, continuous requests. We have none. Item number 5, consent docket. We have none. Item number 6, case for individual consideration. We have DTCA-24-00039 at 804 Southwest 2nd Street.
This is in DTD2. This is an application by Roy Vineyard, Vineyard Vogler LLC to demolish building and site improvements. The commission has seen this several times now. The applicant has provided a letter from a structural engineer regarding the condition of the building and the feasibility of repairing and retaining the building versus demolishing the structure. Because of the length of time that this has been under review by the commission, we either have to approve or deny the application today.
Okay, and in the event that the applicant, in the event that the applicant brings this building essentially back to commission or to staff, if we, did either direction, I'm just trying to think, is there anything like with prejudice that we're?
So I believe you all can deny today and they could reapply and submit new or additional information. They would just have to start over with a new application.
Okay.
New application fee, all of that.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Okay, is the applicant here to speak on this item?
I'm John Evans. I'm the contractor for Vineyard Veggies. I think there were some questions about why don't we try to save the building or save the walls. The building is in such a condition, if we tore off the wall, I think the question was posed, why don't we save the walls like we did the building adjacent to it or behind it. The building behind it had a steel superstructure that all the metal joists were holding the exterior walls up, and that's not a problem. If we just try to remove the roof, then we have to buy shoring, and that's a very expensive endeavor to hold the exterior walls up. And the walls in this building are cracking out real bad, that they'll need shoring. And we would have to have a plan for rebuild right away.
Sure. Let me just pull up your engineering report, because I just had a question.
Would you mind signing in on the sign-in sheet there for us so we have your name and information for the record?
I'm sorry, my name is John Evans. I'm a contractor for Vineyard Vogler.
Is there a sign-in sheet there?
I did sign.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, I got all of the documents here. Let's see here. I think the root of my question was, so I was kind of reading through just the report, and it stated that there was kind of a process of removing the kind of first layer of the roof, and my apologies because I wasn't here in the original July meeting, and this probably was addressed, but essentially it stated that you could remove the top layer of the roof and kind of gauge what to do after you look
Okay,
kind of at the
so-
structure, correct?
So you're requesting the top layer, there's two roofs on this structure.
Okay, yep.
On the picture. There's a rain roof, which would, you know, when I was in the fire department, was just a roof over a roof. That is a metal structure that they put over the original barrel roof that was so deteriorated that it wouldn't take a roof. So now we've got two structures of this building that are not acceptable. The rain roof is leaking extremely bad, and then the original roof is rotted out. That all that would have to be removed to replace everything.
Okay.
It has been in like this condition long enough that so many of the joists and stuff have rotted out that they would have to be replaced, and that's just an extremely costly endeavor.
Yep, thank you. Any other comments from the committee?
What's the current square footage of the buildings?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell me what the current square footage of the buildings is?
I do not have that offhand. It's at, I'd say 80 by 120, approximately.
Okay, so about 10,000 square feet.
And my,
I understand the cost is really significant. I don't not particularly fond of demolishing buildings of historic nature, especially if there's nothing that's going to go back in its place. I know we have these costs that are associated with complete demolition and costs with complete renovation and refurbishing and making them back to watertight envelopes. I thought that there was initially a little bit of conversation about what does it take just to get the buildings stable to the point where if they were going to come down, that there was something that was going to go back in their place. I don't see that that's been provided.
Mr. Vineyard is having a hard time, you know,
Sure.
selling the property as is. And he feels that it is necessary to do to get more interested parties to look at the property. So I'm not sure.
From a staff standpoint, when we're taking something down, the typical process is that we're not going to demolish until we know what's going to go back so that we don't end up with a site that is just bare, with the exception of the structural issue that we're sitting in front of us today.
Okay.
So we've got an issue that's a structural hazard, and I understand that. There's the conversation of being able to just brace it and secure it so that the building can be safe. And then a choice can be made once either there's a replacement that's before us that we can make a recommendation on, or that the building can be salvaged if that becomes viable. But what is staff's position of demolishing buildings with nothing proposed for replacement?
So ultimately, and we've seen this happen, we don't have a mechanism to force someone to build something back, even if they do come in with a proposal for new construction. But yes, ideally, we would be reviewing demolitions against the value and the contribution of a new structure in its place, and not merely demolition to get rid of a structure that doesn't have a use currently.
And I think that's the reason why I'm saying we don't have an idea of what it would take to secure it and make it stable and make it to where people would not break in, and make the roof to where it's just stable, not demolishing it entirely and not rebuilding it. I understand completely that the building's in a really bad state, and it might be that demolition is the appropriate course of action. I was hoping that we would be able to see a number for what it would take just to make it stable, so that we could understand if that number was so large that it would be
I feel like those numbers have been submitted.
just to make it.
And we have to, you know, that shoring has to be engineered by a steel company to engineer that shoring, and then that is a rented product. And until until there is future plans for that, Mr. Vineyard would be paying for that shoring indefinitely to make that stable. And we find that is not a very fair advantage for Mr. Vineyard. You know, anything can be rebuilt as long as there's not a budget limit. So, but we feel like this property is beyond its financial advantage to save as is. There's several water leaks in that are causing this building to degrade quicker and quicker each year.
I agree with what you're saying.
Okay?
I feel there's a step that's missing from the standpoint of understanding not just the cost for demolition, not the cost for rebuilding, the cost that it would take to just make it stable. I understand that that's an expense and that it's an expense that would be, if it was rented material, it is an expense that would go on indefinitely. We do not have that information in front of us. And that's what I'm hesitant on, because the building is something that I would prefer that it stays. And I'm having a hard time recommending that it come down without understanding what it would take to just be secure from individuals getting into it and secure from
Okay.
future coming down.
So you don't have my cost estimate on there or the letter from Midwest Wrecking showing those numbers? At what point does that number break at saying this is fair or unfair?
I have a cost estimate of $402,650 for replacing the roof. Is that the number that you're?
That is mine.
That's your number.
But then there's also the estimate for Midwest Wrecking to come in, and if it's just replacing the roof, it's much more than him being able to come in with the excavator and tear down.
Right.
Because basically it's a hand tear down. So
Right.
there should be that cost estimate.
$78,020
Okay.
for a complete demolition, $148,630.
Forgive me my hearing.
Yeah.
Is that not what you were just asking for?
Well, I was curious if there was a number to, not to fix the roof, but just to get the roof to a point where to patch the roof and to do some kind of,
The roof is beyond patchable. That's my objective. It's not patchable. It needs to come off, and there's so much of the joist structure that is damaged that all has to be replaced. And that old time type framing structure needs to be replaced. That was the argument against the other building that we took the roof off. It was terrible shape, big giant holes in it, but it had a metal structure that supported everything. This building does not. It is the old dome barrel roof that's made out of wood. And we did it. There's a building just adjacent directly to the west of that. We did that, and we replaced 50% of the wood decking, and we did replace some of the joist. It was not that bad. So we would love to do it, but this building is beyond that point. I don't know if the aerial photo will show the building to the west of it's got a new white TPO roof. We did that. These two buildings were probably built near the same time, but this building that you're showing right here on page is just in far worse condition. Matter of fact, every building in there has been re-roofed by Mr. Vineyard besides the one that we tore off the metal roof and this one right here. So they have an interest in saving the property, but this one is just beyond the financial necessity to save.
Katie, do we have the ability to kind of review financial feasibility? Kind of what's that process like?
In the demolition criteria, there is the ability to make consideration of economic feasibility. That does typically require the submittal of quite a bit of financial information, not just, here's what it would cost, we think that's too much. But that is a factor that the commission can take into consideration.
And just based off the estimates that we see today, that we've not kind of hit that threshold for economic feasibility, when you say that there's a lot more that has to be provided, is there any clarification there?
Yeah, my staff report documentation
fine.
here just froze up. It's essentially that the economic considerations for demolition aren't just that this is costly, this is perhaps more costly than a rehab would be. It's that there is no viable economic use of the property. So demonstrating that takes showing things like the inability to find, inability to sell the property. I pulled it up. The existing structure is incapable of earning a reasonable economic return. The structure cannot reasonably be adapted or rehabilitated for any other use which would result in a reasonable economic return. The owner or developer, using due diligence, has been unable to find a financier, purchaser, or tenant that would enable the owner or developer to realize a reasonable economic return. For the purposes of evaluating this, the applicable standard is what an owner or developer in a good faith judgment would consider to be a reasonable economic return for the structure. And then the burden of proof is on the applicant to provide cost analysis and supporting documents, including the cost of demolition and financial information regarding stabilization, repair, rehabilitation, or reuse, which may include appraisals, profit and loss statements, itemized expenses, listing of the property for sale, current fair market value, records depicting current conditions of the property, and other relevant documentation. The Design Review Commission may refer this to an economic review board, which is appointed by the city manager. That's not something that we've typically done in the past. And you're not required to do that. The commission can make those decisions themselves, but it's listed out in the ordinance as an option.
Thank you. I think I just kind of struggle with giving yes to a demolition with such a historic property. Obviously, we understand that this property has been in some disrepair for quite a while. There's, you have your letter here from, I think it's Hill Engineering, and then you have a former one that's from Hall Engineering. I think our concern is that we also don't want to set a precedent for demolishing historic buildings.
I understand. Nobody, I love historic restoration. That's how I met the Vineyards. Did stuff for their personal houses and stuff. I get that.
Yeah.
It's just, at what point does it make sense?
Mm-hmm.
We don't feel like it makes sense. And they've invested a significant amount of money in repairing what they've have done. So it's just,
Sure.
for him, it's not economically feasible. More to that would be for Mr. Vineyard to speak to, but I don't know if he's had exact reasons for that deals not to go through because of that building. But I just know he met with me saying he feels like it needs to come down.
Sure.
It seems like that this is specifically that sale of the property is being hampered by this building's presence on the site.
That is my understanding, yes.
So then if that's the case, then there's a value for the demolition. You've got it here. That's a value that would be expensed on either side of the coin. In this instance, we're demolishing a building so that it can be sold for more money when the building, whenever its viability is not even being taken into account for the individual who might purchase the structure. It seems like demolition for the purpose of a better sale is not something that we should set as precedent. And that doesn't seem like the right thing to do. Especially, and I understand, it's extremely expensive to get the building fixed.
Okay, what do we do about the liability of people coming into this building? Is the city council liable to this hazard to the public that you are forcing us to keep?
What's the, securing the openings is.
I'm talking about just the structure itself there. You can't see on this, but there's a large smokestack that is deconnecting from the building. If it falls, who's liable for that scenario? I mean, of course, I could come up with 1,000 scenarios. I'm just saying.
But I think in
if
this scenario.
something goes bad, is Mr. Vineyard liable because we're not allowed to take care of that liability?
And I think in that situation, that's what we're talking about with respect to, if there is something that's a liability, there's a cost associated with the liability. What we have is the cost associated with fixing the roof and the cost associated with demolishing the building. If the cost associated with fixing the smokestack and making it to where it's not going to fall down, the cost associated with this specific area of wall, which is imminently in danger of collapse, and in closing the windows, and that cost is a specific number that could be evaluated against whether it's viable. That's what we were initially talking to when we were saying, what's it take just to get the building secured? So that then it could be placed in either up for sale or it could be looked at with respect to being renovated. I don't think we've done that yet. And again, for the points that we're talking about, demolishing a historic structure without something that's going to go back in its place and only for the purpose of making the land more viable for a sale, that seems counter to what we're trying to accomplish here. I do think the building should be made secure. I do think if there's something that can be seen that's a problem from the engineer's standpoint and a safety risk to the public, that should be addressed. Openings in the building that people could go in and cause harm to the inside of the structure, that should be addressed as well. This could be reapplied for. And I feel like it should be reapplied for if we had the information about what does it take, not to completely remove and replace, but just to put the structure in a situation where it could be.
So suppose we can secure the structure. There's no definite timeline on that, but we secure the structure. It'll keep rotting the roof. But let's just say if that number is the same as the demolition, how is that investment wise for Mr. Vineyard?
It's a valid point. Yeah.
And I think that was kind of the point that I wanted to make with the kind of economic feasibility. It's like, so I think this is the first time that this has actually been brought back to our commission since July. So we've had 6 continuances.
Something like that.
So we've had 6 continuances to where this has been on our docket and that has been continued.
It was hard for me to wrap my head around of what you wanted, because again, anything can be rebuilt. It could totally be burned down, and we could rebuild it from the basement up. At what point is that fair for Mr. Vineyard?
Sure.
Is what my case is. So we just don't feel like it's fair. And I feel like he has done significant work on the whole property block to improve that site. It's just this building has not been a good one. So, Mr. Do you have any input on?
Okay. Any comments?
I think these properties have been in the same ownership and stewardship for at least 38 years, as far as I can
would
see back
assume
on the county
that's-
assessors.
Sounds right.
And it seems like fair or not fair to allow a building to fall into disrepair and then say to us, hey, it's not fair that you're not letting me demo my building that I didn't take care of because I want to make more money off of the sale. Seems like not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to look through the lens of, is this a historic property? Does it have value, and is it contributing to Oklahoma City? And what can we do to try and save it if we deem it historic and valuable? That's really the crux of what we're trying to talk about. The economic viability and all of that is very complicated. From where I sit, it feels like a historic building that is near an area where Oklahoma City has invested tremendous amounts of public money at the park. And it feels like we need to make sure we have all of the information necessary to make the correct decision. And it seems like the Hill engineering letter is not conclusive to say, this is exactly what it will take to temporarily shore this and protect it, to allow the transition of a sale of the property. So where I sit today, I feel it is historic, and I don't have enough information to allow it to be demolished.
It sounds like, though, then there's not going to be a letter that is satisfactory towards you on that, because you want the building.
I can be satisfied, but I don't feel like a 3-paragraph letter from Hill Engineering that says to completely demolish it, it's $70,000, to temporarily shore it, it's $140, or to rebuild it completely is $480. Therefore, it's not economically viable. You should knock it down. For me, as an architect, knowing what we can do to historic buildings, I don't have enough information from that letter that tells me, yes, this is dangerous, it needs to go. If the smokestack is falling and it's an imminent danger to society, maybe that's something else, but I don't have that in here.
Okay, well, my opinion that it is. I'm not an engineer, so that's all I can give you there.
I wanted to just
Understanding what you're asking for now. It seemed very unclear before. But I do know that it will take a lot of shoring. If we was to take off that roof and not have the money to repair that roof completely, then we would have to have shoring up. And that shoring, I can't remember, it's like a $4,000 a month fee to do that.
quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
In this application, there was a report submitted by Hall Engineering with a suggested action plan, which included, having qualified contractor deconstruct and remove the original roof. Before removing original roof, the following should be verified. So ensure the new truss roofing system is properly designed. Walls and parapets. There's some helical stitching ties. I mean, there's a list of items that are on this this application. Have those items been done?
They have not yet. No.
Okay, and this was in, obviously we received this in 2024, but I think the report was completed in 2022. So for sake of round numbers, for 2.5 years, you have this engineering report that gives you some direction on where to go, and the applicant has not made any steps in that direction. So I think that's to the point that Mr. Schmidt was making, to where, that the steward of this building for the 38 years has allowed the building to be in this direction, or to fall into the disrepair. So it's difficult for us to kind of make the decision to say, hey, yes, let's demolish this for the benefit of a sale. That makes sense.
Yes, except, during the time that they moved locations, they bought the old Safeway building, and so that building has not been, in a permanent use. And so, yeah, your attention's not going to be on those things. But
Yep.
it's still a liability.
Yep.
It just feels like the premise of the argument is the cheapest way for us to deal with this is to knock it down, which makes it the most potentially viable for a developer to come in and put in a parking lot. That's what it feels like.
I hate the word cheapest. It's still an expensive endeavor, no matter which.
Yeah, but it helps
forward that Mr.
facilitate
Vineyard
the
chooses.
transaction that in the future allows a developer to come in and put in a parking lot. That's what it feels like. You wouldn't spend $400,000 to re-roof a building and then demo it and put in a parking lot. So it just, that's what it feels like. And so I have a hard time approving it, not knowing where the thing is going. And I think we could say, you know, if it's been in the, I'm not going to go into the economics. That's just where I just don't feel like we have the right information.
Is there anything that we could provide to the applicant to help make our decision a little bit easier? Or specifically something that you're looking for? Is that what you were going to say? That too. Okay. Is there anyone else in the gallery that wants to speak on this item? Okay.
What I'm looking at this from the standpoint of if an owner brought this to me and said, look, I don't want to demolish this building, but I don't want to spend a lot of money on it. So what is the most cost-effective way that I can get myself navigated from point A to point B? As a problem solver, those are brought to us daily. And we would be looking at it from the standpoint of, hey, if you can get somebody to assist you with a very cost-effective way of getting that second roof off and trying to find a very, very cost-effective way of making the building watertight and doing some minimal amounts of fixes to and this is not for aesthetics. This is not something that's a final product. It's just we need to reinforce this one bottom cord and we need to add in a little bit of deck covering, things that would look very haphazard, but it gets the thing stable. This part of the masonry needs to be repointed, or those helical ties. I've used those on multi-wide masonry buildings before. And if that scenario was priced out with, hey, we're not trying to make this beautiful and we're not trying to make it a completely conditioned envelope, we're just trying to get it stable and make it to where it's not going to continue to degrade. If that kind of information was here and showed numbers that were financially not viable, but if it was, I mean, if an owner came and said, no, I don't want to take this down, show me a path to the least possible, it seems like those numbers would be less. But if they're still similar, they allow us to make a better ruling than what we have currently, which is.
To me, the question you're presenting to me would be like, I've got an old house, wood siding, and it's got chipping paint everywhere. What it would take just to paint that over that is a total waste of money not to do that properly. Total waste. Just spent money that is not needed to be done. What needs to be done is all the paint needs to be stripped off and then repainted correctly. So I'm trying to be eloquent with my.
No, sure.
Never done this.
No worries. You're fine.
I think it's wrong to ask somebody to do a temporary repair like that, to spend money and then still a significant amount.
So I think what I'm saying is, don't do that repair. Let us know what that repair.
I'm addressing the repairs what you're talking about. How bad that rain roof shape is in, and
The upper one.
the upper roof. As historical preservationists, surely you all want that rain roof tore off.
Correct. That
So
would have to.
let's get that off, and then just get the original roof repaired, watertight. Is still a significant amount of more money than, and I'd have to sit down and figure that out, but I know it will be more than Midwest Wrecking coming in and taking care of the problem for us.
I mean, I think for me, it's, we can't force you to spend money to improve your property in the hopes of trying to sell the property. but we can say that you're not allowed to demo a historic building. We don't have to give you the right to spend money to demo it, and we don't have the right to tell you to spend money to improve it. But I think where I sit, it feels like a historic property that has value to Oklahoma City in its current state. Given the information I have, I do not believe I have the information that allows it to be demolished. And that's just where I am.
So to Tony's point, with even just pricing out, getting it back to a secure structure, is that helpful, not helpful?
I would like to see removing the upper roof, securing the windows, addressing any masonry that is dangerous, and doing something so water doesn't come in. It doesn't have to be a re-roof. It doesn't have to be, I'd like to understand.
In my opinion, that is not a possibility without a complete re-roof.
What's the,
My first job as a contractor was a roofer, so I do understand roofing quite a bit. I don't do a whole lot of flat roof, but I do understand roofing. And that is not a temporary fix, at least not for any amount of time.
what is the material of the barrel?
The barrel roof is a
Is it
two-by
modified
framing structure.
The roof system? Is it
Originally was a hot mop, yes.
So it's a 4-ply asphalt?
Originally, yeah, and I think it even has a rock ballast on top of that. So
Okay.
to go back with what everybody's doing nowadays
Oh,
with
yeah.
a TPO, and it has to be, you know, when you say temporary, what am I going to put on there? With new roofing structures, you have to insulate it. So now, I mean, that's just all a part of that cost of, you have to put a ISO, poly-ISO on top of it to meet with modern building codes.
I don't think we're talking about putting up something that would be a permanent fix.
Correct, but what my argument is, it is pointless unless you are going to do a permanent fix. That you're asking me to put on materials that are just not going to hold up at all.
Not knowing the condition of
You
the
asked
roof.
to make it watertight, which it is. It rains in there all the time. I gave permission to the fire department that they could train in there, thinking that we were going to get the dormant, and they don't want to be a part of it because it's wet everywhere and it's mold and mildewy, and so this is our answer to the problem.
I think at least for me, I think we're at a spot where we're at an impasse. We don't have the ability to make a choice to recommend demolition yet.
Okay.
It's not that I can't be convinced. We've been convinced in the past to have buildings be demolished, even if they were ones that we would have loved to have seen them stay, but we agreed with the information that was presented to us that they did need to go. I don't feel like I have that yet. My concern is that we're talking past each other in this conversation about whether or not the information can be
Right.
provided.
So there was a report by an engineering firm, Mr. Brandon read to us in
Correct.
20. It showed all these deficiencies, correct?
Yeah.
So do you need an estimate written from an engineer?
No.
Because engineers do not provide estimates. Okay. So the engineer report is showing what needs to be done. Based off of that engineer's report, do you want numbers off of that, or just saying, what, I'm still a little bit lost in what you need?
From the construction company side of things, that's where you're gonna come from the construction company side, and you're gonna understand the dollars and the economics of what needs to be done. You can get a price to remove the upper roof. That's an easy one. What's below it, I don't know. I know there's a lot of improvements in silicone coatings that are applied that are not long-term fixes, but they do make buildings watertight, and they don't require you to strip off the ballast and go and do a whole bunch of other things. That would be a cost that could be included as well. Yes, there's structure underneath it that needs to be shored, not the entire building. That would be a cost that could be included. And then you've got information about areas of the masonry that need to be fixed in order for them to be stable. And every opening needs to be secured, whether that's plywood or some other method, so that people don't get into the building. I think if those had 5 line items, had dollar numbers associated with them, that we could really take a hard look at what that would be, because at that point the building would be stable. You would have the masonry addressed, you would have the envelope, the upper roof addressed, the structure would be temporarily secure, and it wouldn't have the ability of people to get in. With that, I believe we could make a decision.
Okay. So again, now, not trying to talk past you, but if I come up with these numbers, is there a dollar amount that satisfies you? Because you don't have anything that says, where's that tipping point that's acceptable for Mr. Vineyard to be able to do that? So I feel like there's not a satisfactory number because you feel like we're trying to sell for just more money. It's just a matter of making more money. And so at what point do you go, oh, it makes sense to me?
Yeah, I do not. I would not be able to tell you that there is a number currently. That would be something that I would guess I would ask staff's support on, and if you could, and it might be something that your team brings to the discussion. But I don't currently have a dollar number. I'm looking to see what is the effort look like. If the effort feels in excess, then that's whenever we've said. And I understand the engineer said, hey, the costs associated with demolishing are such that this is not viable. I don't have something that says the costs associated with doing the numbers that we're talking about now, the 5 line item list. I don't have something from an engineer that says those costs are not viable. I'm just referencing his Mr. Metcalf's.
Yeah, that report was given to us by Midwest Wrecking, their connections. Because again, I was totally lost on why, again, anything on earth can be rebuilt. To me, it still comes down to a matter of value and
Right.
At what point is the break over?
There's a cost associated with removing the building,
Right.
and then this could be sold. There would be a cost associated with doing the effort that you and I are talking about, and then it could be sold. Both of those are numbers worth
But
reviewing.
even if I come up with these, I have no guarantee of approval of, 'cause if I'm going to come up with those, I'm obviously coming back
Sure.
to have approval for demo.
Well, I think today we actually have to make a decision to approve or deny because we're at the end of the timeline, right? So we're at the end of the 6 months. So that's, I think we could have maybe have gotten to a solution prior to the end of the 6 months, I think is what I'm trying to say. So, had we had this information 3 months ago, 2 months ago, I think we'd be further down the line, right? But at this point, because we're at the end of the continuances, we have to either go with an approval or denial.
Correct.
And we do not have enough information to approve, so this does leave us to a denial, but that does not, which, to my question at the beginning for Katie, that does not prevent you or the applicant from coming back and.
I realize
Right,
that.
yeah, and so that's.
I just don't want to be chasing a tail of that. You're never going to be satisfied with whatever. So, again, the financial burden is not on you, it's on Mr. Vineyard, so.
Sure. And, yeah, very fair.
So it does sound like today we're moving forward in the direction of a denial. if you want to follow up with staff after the meeting, we can talk through options. You do have the opportunity to appeal this decision to Board of Adjustment. You have the opportunity to reapply, but we can talk through that with you, with the property owner, after the meeting today.
Thank you.
Yep. And then if you, again, walk away from this meeting not feeling like you have enough clarification, please work with staff.
I do,
And-
I do
okay.
need much more clear, verification on that. Yeah.
Yep. Am I entertaining a motion?
I'll make a motion to deny the application on the grounds. Hang tight one second, I want to say this correctly.
Okay, can we back out of that?
Grounds that is not in compliance with the Downtown Design District's ordinance as recommended in the staff report. Is that sufficient? Okay.
They don't have that. That's just an HB thing.
Okay, that motion passes. Thank you, appreciate your time here.
Thank you.
Next, for case for individual consideration is DTCA-24-00073 at 100 Southeast 2nd Street.
This is an application by Stephanie Shiki, Americo Real Estate Company, for Stuart Schoen, 23 SAC, to install false overhead doors at the north, south, and west elevations. This is the U-Haul building that is adjacent to, it feels like it's in Bricktown. It's still part of downtown, based on the location. And this building is clad in a metal cladding that was done prior to the design district. Today, that cladding wouldn't meet the design guidelines, but because it exists, it can remain, and the doors are allowed by the guidelines based on the existence of the current metal cladding. We raised some items in the, so the doors are not functional. They don't provide any access into the interior of the building. They're just fastened to the exterior cladding, and we've noted that this has been done at some other U-Haul properties in other locations to kind of communicate that there's self-storage, is my understanding of the purpose of the doors. We cited references in your staff report of guidelines for historic properties. You might look at this and say, why are these guidelines in the staff report for this building? This, underneath the cladding, is a 1912 brick warehouse that was a Nabisco factory, and to our knowledge, most of that historic fabric is still there. Those criteria talk about when you're doing work to a historic building, retaining the historic character, going back to a more historic appearance. However, in the case of these doors, staff doesn't really feel that it's doing any further harm than the cladding that's already there on the entirety of the structure. So you have two recommendations in there, one to approve the doors as proposed, one if you felt that they should be denied. And the main concern we raised beyond just kind of the aesthetic appropriateness of the installation is whether this is causing confusion to the pedestrian realm, to vehicles about thinking that they could pull up to one of these doors and that it would open and be functional. That sort of thing. The representative for the application is present and can answer any questions, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have for staff.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Okay, would the applicant like to speak on this item?
So I'm Scott Bracken with you all. I'd like to give you a little history of the building and maybe a little bit of history about the imaging that we did to it. The building was built, of course, in 1912. It was known as the Eigens Biscuit Factory. Of course, we purchased this building in 1977 and have served the Bricktown businesses and the community for 48 years. In 1989, which was early into the MAP program, we put it was actually a white metal skin that we put on the building. Then in early 2000, we agreed to image the building to match the surrounding and the ball field. The green teal right there at the self-storage is basically, you know, a baseball diamond or a home plate to go along with the ball field. But I'll answer any questions that y'all got.
Any questions for the applicant?
And just for fun, that's the historic photo of the building. So maybe someday.
It's really a branding exercise, is it not? Is it to show the intent of kind of what your other sites are doing? It's not a functional issue, it's decorative. I'm a little torn aesthetically, but I understand, I think, what you're doing. Since staff is saying that it's in compliance due to the fact that the metal already exists, independent of the fact the metal is existing non-compliant. But it's a branding exercise. It's truly imaging. Is that correct?
Well, it serves basically two purposes.
Okay.
One is it's kind of a architectural detail. It's going to add some aesthetic value and dimension to the building. And it also is going to create awareness in the community that we're not a warehouse. That's what we get a lot is when you see the big building down there, everyone thinks it's a warehouse. So it's basically to create, to let everyone know that it is a storage facility also. So.
But they're non-functional.
They are not functional, no. And there is, on two of the sides with it, there's a curb with grass, and you wouldn't be able to back up to them.
Yeah. Per the report, it mounted outside of the skin. The skin's not coming off. These aren't even being embedded in. What's the manner? I mean, this is an old R panel. What's the manner that you're not going to allow water to get in behind that can't then get out because you've got a skin over you've got a door system over a skin over an envelope?
Well, there's actually a space in between the skin and the building that even if the water goes behind the skin, it doesn't affect the building. There's like a foot difference.
Okay, what's going to keep, like if you have moisture on the inside in between the door and the old metal skin, what's going to keep that space from starting to eventually corrode?
Well, I know
And it
we
may
used
be in the detailing.
I'm sorry.
It may be in the detailing, but just from the standpoint of not ending up with something that causes a bigger problem down the road.
Right. I believe they used a certain kind of screw that actually attaches to the rib that goes through, that locks in there. I'm not exactly.
Can water get behind the new door?
No. Not behind the screw, but that just attaches flat to the actual metal. So it's basically just metal on metal right there.
The metal has a rib.
Yes.
So the water can get down into the rib because it's not a flat piece there. There's got to be a way for water to get down behind it, and I'm curious, how's it getting out? That's the main thing. Is it done in a way to where it basically vents itself? It's open at the top and it's open at the bottom.
Well, I guess I don't understand because the actual rib is, water can run down the rib, but it can run down the rib without it, without the door there. I'm confused, I guess.
Is there a way for the water to get out at the bottom?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
It's non-conventional. It's a little difficult to take a look at this and try and make an evaluation on it.
I understand.
mean, even though it's non-conventional, kind of the fact that it's this element over non-compliant, but existing non-compliant, I don't have a way where I could say that I would take exception to it. I don't like the fact that the colors, you got high chroma on the doors and faded on the rest of the building, but otherwise I don't see something where I should have to take exception to this.
Any other comments?
I mean, I don't like that you already did it and now you got caught and now you're asking for our permission to do it. And I also stand in the position of there's a nice building under there, and I would rather not take them off and put a whole bunch of holes in that metal cladding and might rot out the good building behind. So it's existing non-compliant of a interesting metal cladding over a nice building, and the city has said they're non-compliance. It is compliant. It is okay in its non-compliance, and I'm kind of like, but I don't love that you just did it and then you came and asked for forgiveness, and we need permission to do it now.
I think the way I'm looking at it is from the standpoint of is if this was brought before us and it hadn't been done yet, and the detailing was correct, and the city was saying no exception, it's already non-compliant. As long as it's done in a manner that doesn't hurt the building beneath it, I would have accepted it. So the fact that he did it, I shouldn't even consider it being done.
Correct.
So I want to see this building come, I want all this skin off. I want this building back to the way it was originally. That's the long-term goal. This building gets to stay in your scenarios, so I'm okay with it.
Any other comments? Is there anyone from the audience who wants to speak on this? Okay. No, I don't think we have any other questions. Thank you. Okay, am I entertaining a motion?
I'll move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in sections C and D of the staff report.
Second.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next for individual consideration is DTCA-24-00076 at 401 Southwest 13th Street. Katie?
This application is in DTD2, application by Stephanie Rollins Turner and Son Homes for Laura Nauman and Carlos Garcia to 1 main building, construct a 3-story house clad with brick and engineered treated wood siding with balcony and single car street entry garage, 2 sidewalks, construct sidewalk, landscaping and site improvements, installed street tree, B, construct single car wide driveway from street, and 4, screening fencing, construct screen wall. This is a proposal to construct a new single family home down on Southwest 13th Street. This is in an area where we're seeing quite a few single family homes go up right now. There are several that have been built right in the surrounding couple of blocks. The main issues raised in the staff report on this application are that, one, that there is screening proposed at the mechanical equipment, but it doesn't appear to fully screen because there is no additional fencing proposed. So either they would need to fence the rear yard so that that would enclose and fully screen the mechanical equipment, or extend that screening all the way around so that it's fully screened from view. And then the other issue raised in the staff report is that the applicant proposes to have a front entry garage with the driveway from the street. We do have several guidelines that address the pedestrian realm, enhancing pedestrian movement, building to pedestrian relationship, and supporting a strong urban environment. We do not have a regulation prohibiting street-facing, front-facing garages, so it is permitted. The property does have access to an alley that would need to be improved, and there recently was established a program to assist property owners with making those alley improvements in this area. But at this time, the property owner has indicated that they're not interested in pursuing building out the alley so that they could use that for an alley-facing garage. You do have some comments from some other property owners that relate specifically to this, and a desire to see rear-facing garages in this area. The only other item noted is really a clarification on drawings. There's dotted dashed lines shown at the 3rd story of the structure on the side elevations, and that hasn't been clarified to staff what that is illustrating. So that's something that we would just, if approved today, we would want that either removed from the elevation or clarification on what those lines are intending to indicate. With that, staff has provided a recommendation of approval with some conditions related to the screening and to those dashed lines on the elevation drawings, and happy to answer any questions. And the applicant is here to answer any questions as well.
How many houses have been built with the front face? I mean, other than the two that are shown in staff report, are there any others that were built with front facing?
I do not know the answer to that question. I think right in this stretch, for the most part, we've seen alley access garages going in, but it's kind of dependent on whether they have access to an alley that is functional or not.
I think that from driving the area, I think that those are the only two.
Yeah. And but those were done before this discussion and emphasis
Yes,
on.
Yeah, I
on
believe
alley
those
facing.
predated this new program to assist with building out the alleys.
Okay.
Good morning. I'm Tim Turner. I'm own Turner & Son Homes. We've contracted with Ms. Nauman and Mr. Garcia to build a home. So I'm here to answer any questions.
Is there a reason why no consideration for the rear-facing alley access?
As far as I know, just the cost to do that alley, of course, it's got to be done to the city, like an approach. It's got to be done to the city requirements. I don't know what the time frame was when that new program came in, honestly. I know that we've been working with them since May, I think, to design and spec out the home. So that was never part of the budget. And I honestly think we're just right at the limits of their budget.
Yeah. I think this program was, and Katie, you may help me on this, I think it was maybe late summer, so July, August. It's
That sounds
probably-
it's fairly recent.
Yeah, and the only reason why I know that is because there was a home that I was trying to sell, so I think it was around that time.
Having rear entry in this area, I think, is a major benefit to the community, to the adjacent property owners, but it's not a requirement. We want a cohesive establishment of properties throughout the neighborhood. The reason why I was curious if there was a reason other than economics that was causing this front entry, it would have been a different discussion. Because I do think that the benefit of having a consistent look is important. Regulation, or how does it work whenever we have, because we are not to legislate from the bench. We're supposed to really apply the rules. And this is not a rule for rear entry, correct? It is something that is, but is it even a recommendation, or is it just something that's made available?
Sorry, say that again?
So is the ability to utilize the alley and be helped with regards to its improvements, is it a recommendation for alley access, or is it not even a listing and you are developing the property and, oh, by the way, everyone else is doing alley access?
So I think the assistance is, the financial assistance for the alley, which is entirely separate from the zoning, is to encourage construction of the alleys development that utilizes the alleys, and not having on, many of these are very narrow lots, not having front-facing garages on all these lots as these properties get developed. From the zoning perspective, it's not a regulation. The only area where we have a regulation addressing alley access is in Cottage, that specifically calls out using alleys when they're available and not having front-facing garages. Beyond that, for this area, it's just guidelines addressing the overall design pedestrian realm, walkability, et cetera.
But it does not reference alley access in the guidelines. It just implies it with the,
Right, right.
That's also very tough because you also have two existing front-facing homes on the north side of, what was that, 13th? Southwest 13th?
I mean, as much as I want to stand here and say I really desire the alley access, the fact of the matter is we've got individuals who have purchased a lot. They went through the process of paying somebody to do a design for them. They have precedent across the street, and nowhere did it say they had to.
Right.
Yeah, if there was, I want the alley access. The alley access is the right solution. It truly is. It's very difficult to say you must whenever there is no you must for us to hang our hat on. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I would love if there was a way for alley access to occur. But I think there's probably several people who want to speak to this.
Yep, 100%. Is there anyone else in the gallery that wants to speak on this item? You can step forward.
I'll just say something real fast. I'm Laura.
Can you, yeah, just come to the podium first. Thank you. Yep.
I'm Laura's realtor, so I sold her this lot with the intention of her building this house on it, and we did very much explore wanting to put the garage in the alley. And it would be fairly simple, right, hypothetically, to put the access from the alley. The problem is that that alley is not an alley. It's like a strip of gravel and overgrown grass. It's completely not viable at this point. So if the city were paying to have that alley developed, then that would be one thing. But the program is an assistance program and not a we'll pay for it program. So in the event that it was required to put it toward the alley and they would have to develop that strip of alley behind the house, it would completely blow their budget. So that's all I wanted to say on that, is they bought it with the intention of developing it to meet the standards of the other homes in the area. And as much as they too would love to have it in the alley, it's just not financially viable.
Thank you. Okay, you need to sign in for the.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Keith, did you need her name? Okay. Can you say your name again?
Oh, yes, Anya Mashaney. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that want to speak on this item?
Good morning. I'm Ashley McAllister, and I own the house across the street. It's 322 Southwest 13th. The alleys have been instated in the area, and the city has worked very hard to give the incentive to give back some money for the expense of building it. They've also written in the documents that when building the alleys, that neighbors can work together to help with the expense of that. So I feel like that north and south alley is right on the property of 401 Southwest 13th. So I feel like it makes sense that they could utilize that because they would only need to be developing that north-south. So instead of, sorry, my nerves, instead of a driveway being right directly in front of that home, all they would need to do is just develop that little bit of alley to access their house and maybe do a side load garage. It wouldn't even have to be all the way to the rear. And so they're basically taking the money to do a driveway here, but just do an alley right here to the east of them. So that's kind of my point.
Okay.
And then I feel like also allowing the sidewalks and the walkability, like Katie mentioned, to be able to utilize walking to the park without a car parked in a driveway right in front of a single car garage, and then you're going around it into the street and not utilizing those sidewalks like you could for the community. Anything else?
Any questions?
Yeah, I did not mention that, but the driveway as proposed is not long enough for a vehicle to park in the driveway. It would be hanging over the sidewalk, which is not allowed.
Right.
So is the house is on the setback though, right?
Yes, but if a car parks in that, like those two homes, those were prior to the alley program down there. And so if a car were to park in front of that driveway, you're then walking around into the street.
That would not be,
Ideal.
that wouldn't be okay with that. Is there, that's an ordinance, not having cars parking over
Right.
sidewalks?
Yeah.
And their property's right on, that's the alley right there.
It does feel like these three committee members think that planning and staff should look at creating an overlay similar to what's in Cottage about rear access garage recommendations. But where we are today, we don't have any teeth to require it. And I think I would like to say my preference 100% would be alley access garages. I have one at my house. It greatly enhances the pedestrian experience of the street. Where we're sitting today, we're a bit toothless to require it.
No, but we could, it seems to me like the way that this development was done, if it's a 25-foot to the curb setback, which seems odd, usually that setback's to property line, but if it's 25 foot to the curb, then at the very minimum, it should be pushed back. But there's also because I'm going to guess that all the houses are going to align going forward. This is a really tricky spot here, because you want the houses to align, so that all the frontages are all the facades are on the same alignment. You do not want cars to park over the sidewalks, and yes, I do agree. Even if the city was going to require alley access, they would be the ones providing the alley. The alley is not part of the property, correct? So they are going to be making improvements to city property that's outside of theirs for a cost. This development needs some additional zoning, but it doesn't have it today.
Right.
The setback is 10 feet from the required setback is within 10 feet from the property line, like throughout the rest of downtown. I think the site plan is just providing that for information's sake, that they're 25 feet off the curb.
Okay.
And so they're actually less than 10 feet. The garage is 8 feet back, and then the front wall of the house is slightly farther back than that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if I need to, but I just want to address the concept of the side entry garage. Doesn't work in this case. There's one, not enough distance to make the turn. There's also not enough width on the house. You can park a car in the garage because the car would probably be longer than the house, or longer than the house is wide. So, and that's correct, Katie. The setback shown on the site plan, I just added extra info. I know the intent is to keep them all aligned, or at least I would assume that was the intent.
With precedent across the street and no other language requiring, I don't see that we can deny this. I would love if there was a way. if the,
Yeah. Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, with the conditions that A, the applicant work with staff to provide revised detailed site plan providing for the required screening for the HVAC unit from the north and the east prior to the issuance of the C of A, and B, the applicant provide clarification on the west and east elevations on the third floor as to what the dashed lines are depicting prior to the issuance of CA.
second the motion.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is DTCA-24-00079 at 616 North Walnut Avenue.
This is in DBD. This is an application by Rand Elliott Architects for Kenny Sudal Okura to 5 install a monument sign adjacent to Walnut Avenue right-of-way. And in the agenda, it notes variance required for maximum size and height of freestanding sign because that's how it was originally noticed. They have actually modified the sign so that those variances are no longer required. They meet the regulations of the sign code for the size and height of the sign now. And then 7, to install a sculpture adjacent to the property that was not previously part of their application. And and as I said, the variance is no longer required, so you would no longer need to provide that recommendation to the Board of Adjustment. So this project was reviewed and approved by the commission, for the overall construction project at a previous meeting, but the sign was continued relative to needing a variance and with concerns about its height, its placement, justification for the variance for that sign. The applicant has worked with staff to come back with a sign that meets the requirements for a freestanding monument sign adjacent to the west side of the property at the entrance to the parking lot, and then has also added a sculptural piece that references an architectural detail on the main building at the corner of the property. And I think you have lots of images provided by the applicant of the design of both the sign and the sculptural element. Both of those meet applicable guidelines and regulations, and staff has recommended approval. The applicant's available to answer any questions you have, and staff can answer questions as well.
Okay, any questions for staff? Okay, would the applicant like to speak on this item?
I am Jeff Johnson, developer of the project. Basically, I think through the first pass with this, I think we were kind of misunderstood. In the beginning, we were trying to create a monument or a place of recognition for the Flatiron District. So we were trying to incorporate signage, sculpture, everything into one. But we've made some changes to it and, followed the guidelines that you guys presented the way you'd like to see it. So I'm asking for approval.
Yep.
And I'll answer any questions you have.
Any questions for the applicant?
I think this is a real success story because I feel like we had a conversation and there was a real purposeful attempt not to just answer the question, but to make it better. And so I appreciate the team. Good job.
Sam? Okay. Is there anyone in the gallery that wants to speak on this item? Okay. Am I entertaining a motion?
I will move to approve case item 5A, install monument sign as revised to be a maximum 12 feet tall, a maximum size of 75 feet, and revised location. And case item 7H, install sculpture on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report.
Second.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And we will communicate to Board of Adjustment staff that you all no longer need that variance. You don't need to go to Board of Adjustment today. So go home and get warm.
Okay, next is DTCA-24-00096 at 301 Northwest 10th Street and 1109 North Harvey Avenue.
This is both DBD and DTD1. This is an application by Brian Fitzsimmons, Fitzsimmons Architects, for Chris Fleming in Midtown to essentially relocate the Midtown Mutts Dog Park to the former location of the Blue Garden Food Court. There's lots of items there. I'm not going to read all of those off, but essentially it is removing features from the Blue Garden development that has closed, signage, et cetera, replacing that with the Midtown Mutts signage, installing landscaping, irrigation, artificial turf, pickleball courts and volleyball courts, and various other improvements, fencing, gates to create a dog park in this location. You can see from the photos a little bit of work has already started at the site. Overall, staff had no major concerns with this. The one item that we did call out for the Commission's attention is the installation of artificial turf. This is always something that comes up when we see that proposed. It's becoming more and more popular in different areas of the city. And the Commission in the past has asked for specific details of how that turf is going to be maintained, how drainage is going to be handled, that sort of thing. So the applicant has provided those details in the packet of how that will be installed and maintained and kept clean in the context of a dog park and those uses. And we do have a recommendation of approval. Happy to answer any questions, and I think the applicant's here to speak if you have any questions for them.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Okay, the applicant would like to speak on this.
Morning. Thank you all for braving the cold with us. Chris Fleming, Midtown Renaissance. This relocation of the dog park is caused by the Palomar project that's going in on the block where the old dog park is, 11th and Hudson. And so we viewed this as a kind of a good temporary activation of the site at 10th and Harvey, 10th and Hudson, and would be glad to take any questions if there are any.
Question for the applicant?
Not a question, but I've been through several of the artificial turf conversations, and it's been so complex. It was really nice to see what you did to make sure that this is something that's going to perform long term. So I think that this is an excellent example of how this can work independent of any kind of ordinance or zoning regarding this material. So I thank you.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay. Am I entertaining a motion? Oh, sorry. Is there anyone else on the gallery who wants to speak on this item? Okay. Am I entertaining a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C of the staff report.
Second.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have DTCA-25-0004 at 700 Northwest 7th Street.
This is an application by Emily Tremblay, Villiers Real Estate, LLC, Villiers Health, to install generators and then to install the required screening at each of the generators. They also need a variance from the Board of Adjustment for the height of the fencing, because in order to screen generators of this size, they'll have to exceed the allowed height for fencing in this location. So this would be asking for both an approval of the generators and the screening and a recommendation to Board of Adjustment on that variance. These generators were installed several years ago. They require a mechanical permit, which does not trigger design review in the permitting process, unlike a building permit where we are automatically kind of triggered to review it and comment on whether or not they have a CA. So these went in without going through the certificate of approval process and were not required to be screened. They were received a notice of violation and have since been working off and on with staff to get that addressed. So the proposal before you now is to install the screening. We do have conditions attached to the recommendation for approval, because some of those screens do not fully reach the height of the generators that they are intended to screen. They would need to be at least as tall as the generators, and then it appears that one of them is not fully screened on all 4 sides. So just kind of the condition that the screening fully conceal and meet or exceed the height of those generators as part of the requirement.
Okay. Any questions for staff?
13-foot tall fence, if it requires a structural engineer's stamp on it, is that going to be part of a fence permit process?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, would the applicant like to speak on this item?
Good morning. My name is Emily Tremblay. I represent Valor Health and Valor Real Estate as Director of Facilities. We're willing to improve the attractiveness of the generators. Our generators are required by Joint Commission as backup power. I'm happy to answer any questions or take any recommendations.
The generators were installed quite a while back. This fence is being installed after that project is complete. Did anybody cycle back to the generator manufacturer and make sure that you've got proper clearance and airflow and everything? It's all good from the generator standpoint.
Yes, we have.
Okay. Is there anyone else that wants to speak to this item in the gallery? Okay. May I entertain a motion?
I'll move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in sections C and D of the staff report, with the condition that A, the applicant obtains a variance from the Board of Adjustment from the regulation requiring mechanical equipment to be screened and from the maximum fence height, and B, that the applicant provide additional screening as approved by staff and shown on the site plan prior to the issuance of the certificate of approval.
Second.
Okay, motion passes.
And I'll move to approve a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from the regulation requiring mechanical equipment to be screened and from the maximum fence height.
Second.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, next we have DTCA-25-00007 at 411 Southwest 14th Street.
This is DTD2. This is application by Gary Randolph, Randolph Design Build, for Mike and Sandy Kiefner to construct a dwelling at 411 Southwest 14th Street and the related amenities. This is another house right in the same area as what we just previously reviewed to the west of Scissortail Park. This house meets applicable design guidelines and regulations, except for there is a consideration in the staff report addressing the fact that the primary entrance to the structure is on the side under the porte-cochere, and there is no primary entry or visible entrance to the dwelling from the street. So the front elevation of the house has numerous windows, but there's not a door on the front elevation of the structure. We do have specific language in the guidelines that says that buildings should be oriented toward the primary street frontage, so that entrances are visible and accessible to pedestrians from adjacent sidewalks or trails. There's not a visible entrance, and there's also not a pedestrian pathway marked from the public sidewalk to the entrance of the home. You would be walking up the driveway under the portico-share and then entering the house. So we do provide a recommendation either for approval or for a continuance if the commission feels that that needs to be addressed and revised in some way as part of the design.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Okay, the applicant like to speak on this?
Good morning. I'm Gary Randolph, Randolph Design Build. And I'm the draftsman designer. I'm not an architect, but I'm a very good draftsman. So I'm drafting, design everything that we build. And the customers I'm representing are right back here behind me. And they just really wanted their kitchen on the front to look out at the street and a portico or portico-share on the east side where they could drive under it, enter the house where they would enter it every day of the rest of their lives. So it was just a particular design element that they requested, and we designed it, and I'm asking that the committee just consider that and give us a variance.
Okay, any questions for the applicant?
There'll probably be a little more discussion, but was there ever at least a study done of what it would look like to have a door and a sidewalk that oriented towards the street, even with the kitchen having its view to the street and the fit and flow? But was there ever a study done with a door and a sidewalk that did not follow up the driveway?
We did, in preliminary design, put that, and it was just, Sandy wants to sit in the kitchen and looking straight out, and it just wasn't able to have an entry door with the kitchen sink right next to it.
I'm trying to get to the, there we go. Okay.
I might add that this home sits on 7 lots, not the previous 4 homes that you saw with the rear garage entrances are our design, and we built them with alley access. But this is a home sitting on 7 lots, not on the 125 by 160 foot lot like the others. So there was room for this one to have a portico on the side, and they requested that the entrance be under that portico, and it's very clearly shown that that's the entry to the house, and I think it would look good with the design to have it with that portico share.
Any comments for, any other comments? I think we're just trying to wrestle with what does that look like for the pedestrian experience? Especially since your other homes kind of follow that guideline.
What's the language of the guideline?
That's it, Katie?
Sorry,
Yeah.
let me see.
Pulling it up as well.
We've got, so there's several different references that we point to in DBD, DTD1, DTD2. Ground floor facade, pedestrian entries should be oriented toward the street and recessed, covered, or otherwise clearly identifiable. And then this is one of those that's in downtown and Scenic River. So Scenic River says buildings should be oriented toward the primary street frontage, the river, and/or a tributary waterway so that entrances are visible and accessible to pedestrians from adjacent sidewalks or trails.
So the issue is that we've got guidelines in both of these in which it says orient towards the street. Your building is attractive, and it's not that the function of it does not work, but being not in compliance, then somebody comes in afterwards, precedent has been set, they do something that's not attractive, not functional, and not in accordance, and they stand on the fact that we set precedent by allowing this structure to have its entrance in conflict with two guidelines. I realize that it would be a plan modification, but I do think it can be accomplished in the, and still keep, it would create a different method of entering, but it would still allow that both the kitchen and the adjacent bedroom to still orient towards the street. I think that you could still do that primarily because of the size of your lot. That's what I'm struggling with, setting precedent. It's different whenever we don't have language, but when we have clear language and we push back against it, I think that's, again, legislating from the bench, something that we're not supposed to do. I'm even thinking of some pretty prominent houses that have side entrances, but they didn't have requirements that were given to us that we're supposed to be adhering to.
I'm not looking at it through as hard of a lens, I guess, as you are. Like, it's strange, but it's not like it's tucked 65 feet back around the corner. I know many houses in Mesta, Crown Heights, that the front door doesn't actually face the street. It's tucked around the corner. I mean, I find it peculiar, and someone that buys the house later on down the road might find it peculiar, but I find the driveway's wide. You can park a car on it and still walk past it, so the driveway basically acts as the sidewalk. And so I'm kind of like, yeah, I mean, if I'm being completely honest, I think this whole neighborhood should have been looked at from a planning perspective, but it wasn't, and here we are.
So your feeling is that it does orient.
I would say the house orients towards the street in so much as there's large windows that put humans in occupiable rooms adjacent to the street, so you get human eyes on the street, which is always a benefit, which is why you don't want a front-facing single-loaded garage, right? And I would say it's near the intent on trying to get a building to face the street. They haven't put a big dark blank facade facing the street. Mm-hmm. You know, it is engaging with the community. Historically, if you wanted to enter off of a side porte cochere, that would be a side door, and you'd still have a main front door. But,
Is there any consideration for any type of landscaping beside the, I'm trying to get to the point of having the sidewalk walk up to the front door, right? Like, I think that was kind of the intent with having these guidelines, is that there's a defiable location walking to the front door. Besides the driveway, there's no clear path, correct?
If this had some differentiation between driveway and a sidewalk, somebody knows I'm stepping on the sidewalk and I'm walking up it. It doesn't have to be a bold move, but it's something that somebody who's walking down the street obviously knows. If I'm going up to the house, this is where pedestrians go. And it is somehow separated from I'm not a huge physical separation, but somehow it's separated from the paving surface. It's a design challenge, I realize. And I think it's something that could actually be taken back to staff, just to differentiate the two. That could make me feel good that somebody walking down doesn't walk past the driveway thinking, well, I'm obviously not walking up the driveway, and before they know it, they're on the next lot and going, did I miss the sidewalk?
Right.
Yeah, so is there essentially kind of consideration to maybe beside the driveway that we're having some type of landscape hard, like a soft paved plan?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do we craft that language?
What's the grade change between the house and the street, or between the sidewalk and the street?
Say it again.
What's
I'm
the
sorry.
grade change between the sidewalk and the street? Is it flat? Does it have,
Oh, the elevation, the house is setting about 4 feet above the curb line.
and obviously the driveway is straight, there's no interest in the driveway, but the sidewalk could have some articulation and still have the driveway right beside it.
Right.
Does this go back to Michael, or does this go back to Laura if she comes back?
Sorry?
Who would this go back to?
Generally Laura. If Laura's not back, then I'll
Okay.
look at it or Michael will look at it. One thing might be if the driveway
Yes, sir.
shifted,
A bit to plain right.
shifted a bit to the right, that there could be more of a clear pedestrian path between the driveway and the house up to the point that the portico share covers the entry. And then the driveway could widen out beyond the portico share. We see that a lot in older neighborhoods where it,
Does that make sense?
but I think there's a number of different, I think that's clear to me that we're asking them to provide a visible, defined pedestrian path from the sidewalk to the entrance to the house. And there's a number of different ways they can do that, but I think that's something that we could work through at the staff level.
Okay. Does that sound okay for you and the applicant to achieve?
I think whatever you're requesting, I can hear like something in here, the sound, I don't know if it's me, but I'm not following every word. I think you're requesting a visible sidewalk and not a driveway going up to the front door. So I could design a sidewalk. It would be with sidewalls of masonry because we're getting up in the air. So I could start with the sidewalk and it would have brick abutments left and right, something like you would see in Mesta Park. You know, the houses there are elevated up off the street. So I could do something like that, turn to the east and then come over to the driveway and have a sidewalk designed that way. Is that what you're saying? I think.
It could be directly adjacent to the driveway. It
Okay,
could
just
be
connected
over, and it's not going up to the house, it's just almost going right up to the entrance door. I
Right.
think your property owners are on board,
Yeah.
or at least understanding what, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
coordinate with staff
Right.
to come up with something that meets
Sure.
the intent of the guidelines.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Any other comments?
Okay, my name's Michael Kiefner. Gary's my builder. And we're certainly open to a walkway up to the drive. In fact, I kind of thought there was one, so that's certainly not an issue for me. I want the front door to be inviting. We did move it up or south as far as we could toward the street so we're not trying to put it in the back. And the driveway goes right up to that front door. So a walkway around that, we have landscaping ideas in place, so that would actually be very beautiful. We also are going to have a lengthy drive that goes back to a garage that is offset where it's not easily seen from the front. We're not big fans of garages in the front, but I understand people needing it. But we'll also have room for guests to park cars in that driveway and have an area to turn around in the back where we keep cars off the street, and it's less than a block from Scissortail Park. So we thought that might solve an extra problem. The other reason that we moved the front door from directly on the street had to do with our desire for aging in place. We needed two living spaces, one for a caretaker and then to have a main bedroom. So we're trying to think ahead. I know I might look 50, but I'm actually a little bit older than that. And we're just trying to prepare for the future and do something nice for the neighborhood and build a structure that we're going up the 2 stories. We don't really need it, but we want to be in compliance and be consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. That's very important to us. We take this neighborhood, we have a lot of love for it. So that was some of the reasoning that went into our decision to have the front door moved around where we could fit in that extra space for perhaps caretaker at one point. That was our rationale.
Thank you for the one, be sure to sign in, and then 2, thanks for the clarification on that item.
Yep. And another reason we didn't use the alley is because it's only a 10-foot alley behind that property. Previous owners had sold property to the city for a right-of-way easement that cut off part of the alley, and that's why we didn't use it. Needed to put the driveway down the side. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions about the property or zoning or anything in that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the gallery that wants to speak on this item? No? Okay. If not, I entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District Zone as referenced in sections C and D of the staff report, contingent upon that the owner work with staff to develop a pedestrian-specific walk path from the sidewalk up to the front door, and that should be isolated and separate from the driveway.
Excellent.
Second.
Okay. Motion passes. Yep, thank you. Okay, item number 7, other business, we have none. Item number 8, communications.
We have lots of administrative approvals. I won't go through those, but as always, feel free to reach out to staff if you see something on that report and have questions or want more information. Beyond that, I have no additional comments from planning department staff.
Okay. Comments from commission members? Any consideration for members? I mean, I've sent an email to Steve Hill and...
Yeah, as far as I know, they are working on it, but I have no news as of today to report.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Our next regular commission meeting is Thursday, March 20th, 2025. New applications were to be submitted to staff by 4 p.m. Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. Revisions and information on continued projects are to be submitted by Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. We are adjourned.